Oh, that's right. It's that time of the year again. I gotta admit that is probably my favorite part of making all these vlogs is looking back of all the movies I have watched, then make a list of the ones I enjoy and the ones that I don't enjoy, and then categorizing it in a in a mixture between what critically is accepted as a good movie, or with a combination of my own personal bias. I mean, every top 10 is like that, for the most part. That you just have movies that you agree you really like, and some people are not exactly that they agree, but that's technically the beauty of it, that you just go there and compare which ones you saw. For this particular video, I'm gonna talk about my 10 best movies, as well as the typical honorary mentions that couldn't make it to the top 10, but still I have some certain appreciation in my heart. It's just that they couldn't they couldn't get into the top 10 by, well, one reason or another, or because I thought it didn't do well enough for a top 10, whatever the reason it is. But I will also, here's some disclaimers before I talk. Yeah, even just in case, ignore the sirens. It is typical in my apartment and all that stuff. Here's some disclaimers. I haven't seen almost every single movie, so I want to apologize if there are some of your favorites that were left out, and because I didn't see them, so I don't know. For example, I haven't seen Leo, the Adam Sandler Netflix movie. I heard people talk very well about this movie. Maybe I'll watch it when I get the chance, but something about Adam Sandler kind of doesn't sit well to me. I know that he's talented, but I think that I still have some of the quote unquote injuries after watching Pixels. That doesn't sit me well. Also, I don't think that him as Count Dracula in the Hotel Transylvania movie, he was that good. Although I tolerate the movie, that's one thing. Another one that I didn't see this year, but is critically acclaimed, is the horror movie Talk to Me. In ways, I did wanted to see it, but I didn't give myself enough time to go watch it in urgently. But probably I might see it when I get the chance, probably in the future. And another one that is critically acclaimed, but it's not on the list because I didn't see it. It was Flowers of the Killer Moon, the Martin Scorsese movie. I think I said the title of the movie right. You know what? I got here my Google too. Flowers of the Flowers of the Killer Moon. That's the one that I was. That's the one I was talking about. I just didn't want it to screw it up. And I think I'm gonna screw up some names here and there, because what I'm gonna do is not exactly a 100% review. It's just what do I remember from the movies that I saw this year, what I like, what I didn't like, kind of like a small recap from what I can gather from all these. But you know what? I think I talked enough. This was the disclaimer that I haven't seen Leo, I haven't seen Killers of the Killers of the Moon, and also I haven't seen Talk to Me, which I bet it could top in some others, but not this time. So let's get down to business, and like always, I'm gonna talk to you about my the honorary best movies that I have seen this year. Like I said, they're not in my top 10 because of certain reasons, or because I couldn't fit through them. But either way, it still is I think it is a fair chance to at least give them some mention. So let's get started with my honorary best movies of the year. The first honor for best movie of the year goes for the first movie I have seen this year, Megan. I this is something that it shouldn't be on a list, not even for a top list. But I had to put it there, mostly because I was really entertained on how this movie was. It was a bizarre concept, and it had some bizarre special effects, but it has some interesting things. It was kind of like a subtle satire to technology controlling the children, and also give it credit that Megan, the robot, is a creepy character, both how it acts, but also on how it looks. There's kind of like an uncanny valley sensation that it is, and it got me hooked to the point that I was so interested in what is going on. And of course, let's all remember that it had that crazy out of nowhere dance that it wasn't necessary, but they still do it. Sometimes unnecessary things can be done as long as you give them maybe the reason to remember it, sometimes for good reason or bad reasons, and that is one of them. And there was some solid acting. Even I tolerated a little bit the child actress, even though this is one of those that. It's one of those movies, because if you know me, I'm not exactly a fan of child actors, but it's mostly because of their execution, and sometimes they annoy me, or sometimes they just because they're a child, they don't push some narrative risks. But either way, I did find Megan entertaining enough to put it at least on my honorary mention. Let's go with the second one. Let me collect my thoughts for a moment, because I tried so hard to not put that movie on the list. I didn't want it to. It's not that it's a bad movie, but it has something that doesn't make me want to support it. But people like it. There are some things that I like, and it's based on one of my favorite properties. But I didn't want to put it there, because putting there, it means supporting someone that doesn't deserve to be supported, at least personally. But okay, here's the surprise box of this year, at least for an honorary mention. I have my second honorary mention, and I didn't want to, but I think that it kind of deserves a little bit of respect. It's none other than the Super Mario Brothers movie. I love Mario. The Mario franchise was something that I grew up with in the video game department. I was even so happy when a relative of mine gave me Super Mario RPG for the Switch. I'm still playing it, and I found it a lot of fun in a nostalgic way. And well, I'm not gonna lie that the Super Mario Brothers movie, it's better than most video game movies does, which of course is battling the curse that every video game movie has to be bad. But I think they should make it a little bit of a deception when it's about animation, because animation, when it's about video game adaptation, they fare a little bit better compared to live action ones. And I can tell that there was a lot of ambition that this movie had. It had kind of like this big cast, including Chris Pratt and Charlie Day, as Mario and Luigi. Nintendo really heavily promoted this movie because they were so hyped. And you know what? It wasn't a bad movie. I was entertained. Even there was a moment in which I decided to watch the movie in the city's movie under the stars, and I had kind of like a better appreciation. So, with that said, why I didn't want to put this list on best movie of the year? Because putting this movie as the best movie of the year also means that I have to support this how can I say it without insulting it? This dumbass named Jack Black. If you know me, I freaking hate Jack Black. He is kind of like my passionate dislike to this guy. I have so many reasons that I think I told you in many movies how much I think that he's a very, very overrated actor, and I don't trust him at all. I don't trust him at anything at all. And honestly, I was ever since the movie was announced, I was hyped. I didn't even mind the Chris Pratt being in everywhere thing. But once they mentioned Jack Black as Bowser, I said, no, you ruin it. But still, I had tried to watch the movie with open eyes without having one actor, ruin it for me. And guess what? He's the worst part of the movie. I don't care if you say, you're wrong. He was the best. No, he wasn't. Anyone can play Bowser. There are other actors who can play Bowser better. And don't get me started with this awful Peaches song. You tone-deaf people! That Peaches song is awful! The lyrics, it's a lyrics that was made for a 5-year-old. It was a terrible thing. And but you know what? I had to play fair. Because it wasn't a terrible movie. There are some other criticisms despite Jack Black, which, for one, it is some of the overabundance of pop music that sometimes it doesn't fit. Also, I rather would have liked to see Princess Peach in a sweeter side, not exactly like a girl boss side, because Princess Peach was always kind of known as a kind, caring, and sweet character. Doesn't necessarily mean that she had to be the damsel in distress. I mean, look, we're gonna get a new Princess Peach game, and she keeps her sweet demeanor, and she looks cool. I'm actually hyped for that game. But yeah, for the fairness and for fair game, I had to put Super Mario Brothers movie at least for the impact that it caused to some people, despite that there is a wart that bothers me on this one. But you know what? Let's continue on. My third movie on the honorary list is a little movie called Thanksgiving. I'm surprised that I had to put an Eli Roth movie of all places, at least on third honorary best, let alone being an Eli Roth movie. But I gotta give it credit that is probably one of his better movies. I mean, you can tell that the man is passionate of the horror genre. It's just that sometimes he's not a good writer, or sometimes he's not a good director. I mean, case in point, when you see his early movies like Cabin Fever, Hostel, and The Green Inferno. And this one, you can tell that he took the premise of the Grindhouse fake trailer, and finally make it in a movie, and it was decent. There's some low budget and some dumb decisions that they made, but for a slasher movie, it was I was highly entertained. And another reason why it couldn't top is because of the ending. The ending was such a bait and switch that it was so unnecessary. This is honestly, I don't have exactly want to say much about Thanksgiving. Oh, and the mask. I liked the killer's mask, which if this movie could have catch on more people, it could be enough to become a pretty iconic slasher killer in the same ranks as Michael Myers or Chucky in that vein. So yeah, it was a simple slasher movie in Thanksgiving. Oh, and also this you will witness in this movie probably the most bloodiest Black Friday massacre you could ever seen on screen. Probably seconds to the one that happened in South Park. Well, that was enough of my stuffing for best movie of the year, and now it is time for the grand event. My top 10 best movies of 2023. Let's give it a round of applause to the 10 winners. Let's go with number 10. That was a little bit hard for me to put it there. Originally, there was something else in it, but then I had to make a kind of like a last minute change. But at the end of the day, my number 10 best movie of the year is John Wick Chapter 4. What can I say about John Wick? It was an entertaining action movie that I watch it. I feel entertained. I see Keanu Reeves doing his stuff, and pretty much that is it. I do remember that I was a fan of the movie ever since the first one. The first one it's just about a guy having revenge of his dog getting killed. But then after the second movie, it kind of become more style over substance, with a slight dose of character development. The second one, of course, it ended with John Wick becoming a fugitive, and the third and the fourth movie, they were practically the same. It's John Wick versus the world. And although in this fourth chapter, it really capped off the whole franchise, and I felt like the ending was really, really bittersweet. I understand what they were trying to do, although it kind of made me feel kind of like sad of how it ended. But you know what? The more I think about it, this is kind of like the past of the assassin. And while it is not exactly my favorite kind of ending, it fits with the narrative of John Wick. So there we finally finished the John Wick saga. I've been hearing rumors that it's gonna be a fifth one, but I don't believe it, especially on how it ended. Probably spin-off might come out, but sequel to John Wick, I don't think so. Chapter 4, it was, well, literally the nail to the coffin of the franchise. And I don't mean it in a bad way, because, well, that's technically what happened at the end of that movie. But still, it's enough for my number 10. My number 9 is a movie that is kind of like the closest thing to a good horror movie to Talk to Me. Okay, maybe that's a little bit exaggerated, because I haven't seen Talk to Me, and if I could have watched it and like it a lot, it maybe could have been on the list. But I had to think something that is a little bit close, and I had to put it on the list mostly because of the ambitious experimentation that it went, and that is Skinamarink. I haven't seen this one on movie theaters. I watch it on Shudder when it during the Halloween season, and it's a movie that easily could not be on the list. I already gave you my reasons why, and also cramming up making the list of all the movies I've seen. This one eventually got there, but still, I put it at least lower to the. Just to appreciate the ambitious and interesting experiment. A movie where you very, very rarely see a sense of living thing doing anything, and they just wanted to show, well, a movie that you just see the walls or a chair or classical cartoons on the TV. There's nothing, and this is easily something that you could be bored. It's just like trying to watch a movie about watching the paint dry. It was pointless, but they come up with this surreal narrative that it took me off. It's not a movie for everyone else. Maybe it's for movie aficionados that they can endure a movie that is about nothing, but it tries an experiment on its narrative, and things get a little bit kind of like bonkers, especially in the last 20 minutes where everything collapses. You don't understand what the freak is going on, and it leaves out with an ending that it was like, what? That's it? So yeah, I give Skinamarink my number 9. I wish it could have been Talk to Me on the list, but well, you just deserve it just for the interesting experimentation. Number 8 is another one that I was hesitating to put, but it's mostly because I don't want to overhype this director, and that is the Boy and the Heron. I respect Hayao Miyazaki, but I am not exactly kind of like the biggest fan. But the closest to have a kind of like an interesting movie on the big screen, especially traditionally animated, it was that one. I remember, and this movie is. It also goes a little bit into the surreal storytelling. It's basically a Hayao Miyazaki way to create this Alice in Wonderland style of narrative, except that instead of a white rabbit, it's a heron. They go into this world of spirits, and it's something that it can only make sense in the head of Hayao Miyazaki, or for the fans who, well, pretended that they know him, but well, this is the best he could do. I watched the Japanese dub instead of the English dub, and I heard that the English dub is pretty solid, but I don't. Rarely English dub is for me. But at the end of the day, there's a moment in which this movie kind of bore me. Although it was entertaining and interesting enough to keep me awake. And but I did find out that, well, the more it went on, it was kind of like a mad lib of sequence of events. And again, this is mostly a Hayao Miyazaki style when he wants to go for the surreal. Nothing more else to say except that The Boy and the Heron is another Hayao Miyazaki movie for that. It was done with a lot of effort, considering that comes from a guy who said that an anime was a mistake. Well, he made a big mistake saying that. So, is this gonna be Hayao Miyazaki's final movie? Who knows? I don't know what this guy have in his head. Is he gonna retire? He's not gonna retire? Who knows? Number 7 is another movie that comes into horror territory. And I haven't seen enough big horror movies in this year, except for the ones that I have to say. Let me check it again. Yeah, this is probably the best horror movie I have seen this year, at least in terms of taste. Evil Dead Rise. I like the Evil Dead trilogy. I like Ash Williams. He is a badass character. I prefer all these trilogies intact. And I think of them as a big narrative, kind of like Back to the Future, and nothing else that is gonna come from that franchise is gonna be surpassed or anything like that. Although I haven't seen Ash versus the Evil Dead, the series, I don't know. It didn't catch on to me. But the reboot, there are some things that I like, but I didn't like the ending. So I think it was okay, and although I gotta give it credit that for a reboot, it didn't try to be a copycat with the Ash Williams characters. And for Evil Dead Rise, this one they did kind of like the same. It feels like a separate reboot from the other two, but they made things a little bit different. For one, is not exactly in the taking place in the cabin. Well, that's a bad choice of words, because considering the setting of the other Evil Dead franchises, including the Army of Darkness, they don't take place in the cabin. Let's say that for starters, and it starts out like that, but it had a cool opening. I'll give it that. But one of the things that this movie keeps you tense is that it's the whole situation that our victim protagonist goes through. We have kind of like this quote unquote broken family that they try to stick together, but then because of an innocent curiosity, they stumble into the Necronomicon, and the mother becomes possessed by the dead item. Her performance is one of the best I have seen this year. She was scary, and she gave it all her best work in it, and she terrorizes the apartment, and considering that it's not exactly this giant apartment is a small one, it's unsettling. It makes the whole scene feel claustrophobic. And by the way, this movie, it really shows that it has no restraints, because nobody is safe from the Deadites. Well, except there is one moment in which that moment was pretty dumb, and they missed an opportunity to break the mold of some horror movies, but it didn't. This is why there were some aspects that this movie disappointed me, but not enough to say that it was terrible. It did well its job, and for what it's worth, it will make you see cheese graters in a suspicious way. Oh my god! Now that I remember that cheese grater moment, that was cringy, but cringy of something like that. It's so painful. You know what? Let's continue on before I keep on thinking of those cheese graters. My number 6. I was kind of like rolling my eyes if this is supposed to be on the list, because it wasn't exactly that great. And let's say that this is probably as good as a company is gonna get. especially considering the state that is in right now. I'm talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I is I love the first Guardians of the Galaxy. It's still my favorite of all the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. The second one I found it okay. It was pretty good. And this one, Volume 3, well, not gonna lie, I find it a little bit forgettable compared to the other ones, but that is mostly because this one held on a little bit too strong considering on the phase that is going through. And also, the movie kind of have a few plot holes about some characters until I think I didn't mention that during my vlog about that movie. Is that I forgot that there was a Christmas special of Guardians of the Galaxy. That one I skipped because number one is a Disney Plus stuff, and number two, I don't think that Marvel superheroes and Christmas blend together. I kind of think that even though they kind of play out kind of like silly or something like that, I don't think that they kind of blend for some reason. So I don't know. I felt I was kind of smelling something cringy to that. This is why I skipped the holiday special, and which I think that one introduces some other characters and it sets the setting for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. But you know what? I don't know. That still didn't harm my good expectations that I had with this one, because there are a lot of things that works. We see Peter Quill having his thoughts on what to do next, especially now that there's a different version of Gamora that is not even his girlfriend. What was it? We got Drax and Mantis going through their own stuff also. But the biggest star in this movie is Rocket Raccoon. Well, he goes through an existential comatose battle where we see flashbacks from his past where other animals, they bond with him because they were all experimental creature from this guy with the Messiah complex. And it is a sad backstory, and this combined with Star-Lord's quest to save his friend, it makes the movie engaging. There's some silly moments that still Marvel style, but let's not forget that Guardians of the Galaxy kind of started it, and they're not as bad as, well, the other tryhards. It got good enough to put it on the list. So Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, nice job. And number 5, and now we're getting a little bit to the good ones. Number 5, I think I was a little bit critical on that one, but the more I thought about this movie, I was beginning to soften a little bit, and boy, it made it enough to become my number 5, which is none other than Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. I know that I was a little bit too harsh on the on my original review. But you know what? The more I think about it, this was something that it's something that my brain, who just wants to feel entertained, kind of needed without being pander for a bit. It's a silly concept of just Dungeons and Dragons, having this guy, these people doing role playing as characters from for a fantasy world. And we got, of course, this story about this Chris Pine being this bard slash rogue thief father, trying to rescue his daughter, and then he has the help with. Let me try to remember. It was a barbarian, a magician, and a druid, a druid that can transform. I kind of forgot most of the elements of this movie, but you know what? I also begin to, one of the reasons that I began to warm up with the movie is that I began to notice how people were kind of really being positive on the movie despite some of its flaws. That's what, and you know what, that fair game with me. There are moments that they work. And I gotta say that maybe it's the trailer that didn't help things out. It felt a little bit too corny, that they wanted to try hard the Marvel style humor, and sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Probably the corniest thing that you could see in this movie is when they wanted to pay homage to the animated series, in which you really see. By the way, it is during the maze in the Colosseum, where you see people dress up as the cast of the Dungeons and Dragons animated series. I have to watch it again because I think they missed the unicorn. That's the only character that you didn't see. You see, but overall, it was nice enough to revisit that fantasy world of Dungeons and Dragons. I know that the franchise as a whole is a little bit on, let's say in some limbo, but you could give it a chance for this one to say, well, I did enjoy it as best as it could. Number 4 is another one that I didn't expect it to be on the list. Because watching that movie, it was kind of like a technical marvel of animation. It has some great animation, really talented characters, and my God, it shows kind of like how well the multiverse can work a lot of times. Yeah, sometimes multiverse things can really work. And that movie is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. Ha! You thought I was gonna go with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Nope. No. I'm not gonna put Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse in the list. You want it, you can put it in your own list, but not me. Probably the biggest reason I don't put Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse is that as much as I did praise it and I give it some props into it, there are some things that kind of made my eyes roll. And I think one of the biggest things that I give Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse is that it was a headache. That movie gave me a headache the whole time I was watching. It was a lot. It was ambitious. I'll give it that. But when the movie ended, it was something that it was kind of like a headache. My eyes was hurting after finishing the movie. And besides, it's a first parter of something that kind of diminished kind of the expectation of people. Even though the one that I put on the list is also not guilty about that too. So that was my disclaimer. Now I can continue on why I put Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem on the list. Because I did grow up with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and for a movie that I thought that I was gonna go, I don't think I'm gonna like it. Yeah, it turned into, you know what? It wasn't that bad. It was and and it's another universe for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They kind of established that the franchise also has its own multiverse. This is another one of them, and it has some really stylish animation that it looks like claymation, but not exactly. But not exactly claymation. They just kind of look a little bit like that. I like the roles of the turtles. I like the mutants. I like the villains. I like the story arc that Master Splinter had to go through. Oh yeah, that's another reason why I had to put there for Jackie Chan as Master Splinter. That and as someone who grew up with the Ninja Turtles, that was I was really highly entertained watching this movie. Although there were a few, I can acknowledge that there are some few nitpicks that I can put it. For example, I still can't put on my head why people are insistent of giving Donatello glasses because he's the nerd. But this is probably because the one who had that brilliant idea of Donatello with glasses was Michael Bay. So I don't think that anything that comes from Michael Bay is not exactly a good idea. And also going back to Donatello is his voice. He sounds uh, he sounds too much like a child compared to his other brothers when they're supposed to be, well, teenagers. Um, whatever you say about April O'Neil, well, I'm open to that. She's not my favorite April O'Neil design-wise. If you ask me which is my favorite April O'Neil in design and character, it's the one from the 2012. That one really fits, this friendship circle of the turtles, as well as she really kicks ass, and I like her design. She's really good. She's supposed to be she's a bit, well, she's mostly known as the red hair pretty and all that stuff. I think that I don't have much of an appeal for this overweight April O'Neil. But she has a good characteristic, and that I will give it credit. It's just a matter of taste. But other than that, I'm actually very surprised that I managed to put Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the list. But well, those were those were kind of like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4 of the list. Now let's go for the big three. And those big three, I didn't have any difficulty of thinking. I gotta be honest. The best of the list, considering the movies that I have seen, it wasn't exactly very easy to build. Except for the top three. Those top three, these are the ones that they legitimately cause an impact, and giving me a little bit of hope that there is still some good on filmmaking. I know the problems that cinema is going through, but this is kind of like a big can of worms that I don't want to go to at the moment. So let's continue on. My number three, my number three on the list, it wasn't exactly the best movie of the year, but it still got his gold. Sisu. How can't you go wrong with this one? The story about this prospector who doesn't say a word except at the end of the movie. He doesn't say anything. He just wants his gold back from the Nazis. And he will do anything to get it. It is an almost Quentin Tarantino style action movie that it leaves you at the edge of your seat. If it's almost like this movie makes you feel bad for the Nazis, mostly because it's about them just waking up the tiger between on this guy who only wants his goal, and he will kill them brutally no matter what. It was one of those in which I just couldn't believe what I was watching, and I was so having this dumb grin on my face just watching all this carnage. And I think the biggest reason why this is an interesting movie is that you know very little about our protagonist. The protagonist is just a prospector looking for gold. You'll hear bits and pieces about what he is and what he was. They give you hints about what it is, and the more you hear him, it's almost like they're building up a legend of this guy. So much that the title of the movie is called Sisu. I think it was Finnish, a Finnish word. I don't remember what it is, but it is a word that also that means determination. Something like that. As far as I can remember, but man, that in ways I want to watch that movie again. And maybe you should. And this is as high of a recommendation I could give you for an action movie that you don't expect to find the meaning of life or how to live your life better on a movie. Just watch for the carnagey spectacle of someone who is looking for his gold. You say that gold, they say that gold is kind of like the root of all evil. Well, it's also the motivation of some guy to kill off the people who are technically known as the entity of evil. But either way, this movie had some sisu, and it got into the number 3. Number 2. I was surprised that this one came up to number 2, because this is coming from one that has a respect to this director, but he finds it overrated. That's me, of course. But it made it on the list, and that movie is Oppenheimer. I consider Christopher Nolan kind of like pretentious director, but when he does things right, he does things right. For example, I like The Dark Knight and Dunkirk, but sometimes he gets a little bit pretentious when he makes movies like Inceptions or Interstellar, which some people like it. I'm not on that club. I really despise those ones. I never tried to overhype Christopher Nolan. But then came this one called Oppenheimer. And I'm not exactly a fan of historical drama or historical biopics. But this is a movie about something that got my interest. I like history, I gotta say, despite that I'm not a fan of historical biopics. But this is talking about one of the most interesting persons that history had, and which is Oppenheimer, the guy who was the big brains behind the atomic bomb. That movie isn't exactly kind of like a how can I say, a propaganda or a make you feel movie about the atomic bomb. It isn't that. There is little bit and pieces about there, but it's mostly subjective. But the whole thing is mostly about the project itself. It is a little bit slow paced like many others, but you can still find the interesting dilemmas and and the workload of these people doing this weapon that changes the world. You see the man behind it. He has this kind of like this passion or duty and pride of making this thing, and then even though there's kind of like the chances that that it's gonna change for the better for the worse, and well, look what happened, and there is kind of like a mixture of pride and regret of what he has done. It's so you but I think that the movie's biggest goal is to have some interest of the guy on the guy himself. And that's what I did. Most of my family went to see this movie because we're kind of a little bit of those pseudo intellectuals for the most part, especially my father. My father is not exactly a moviegoer, but he was interested on Oppenheimer. My father is one of the most intellectual persons I have ever known. He's basically one of my heroes. And me and my dad began to talk about the history of the guy. We struck a conversation. We learned more about, the dilemma about what you should do for your country, and even though you created a bomb, and sometimes it opens a lot of questions and speculations. And sometimes there are some things that I forget, and there are some other special effects that are interesting, but this is kind of like more of a stylistic thing. Oh, by the way, you never see the bomb going off. They gave an allegation, but sorry to disappoint you. This is not exactly about the bomb, but it's about the man himself. And if this movie wakes up some interest about knowing the man and his ideologies even further, well, not exactly ideology, his way of thinking. This is a movie that is good for you, that is made for you. And also, it's a good thing that this movie is a little bit more, that it made its research, and it doesn't romanticize it so much, because this is kind of like the reason I'm not exactly into biopics, that they usually romanticize it too much. This one didn't go that far. Here's an atomic victory for Oppenheimer. And now, let's talk about my number one movie of the year. That movie, it was a big surprise. I thought that Oppenheimer was gonna be my number one, but it came out late to the party, and it swooped not only my expectations, but it also swooped a lot of other people's expectations. So much that the more people are picking up to it, they're beginning to realize that that movie was worth a lot. It's been a while that I have seen something so good that I rarely do this. I went to watch it again. Actually, I went to watch it again today. It's still fresh on my memory. But you know what? I'll say it out loud. Congratulations. The number one best movie of the year. Round of applause, everyone. The winner is Godzilla -1. As someone who didn't necessarily grow with Godzilla, but began to pick up a lot of respect to the king of the monsters, finally, we get a movie that it comes close to being as socially aware, less cheesy, but also entertaining as Godzilla -1. It's funny how this movie saved me from a bad movie. That one came into collision with me wanting to watch Silent Night. But then I've been hearing rumors about Silent Night. But then there's Godzilla, who is kind of like the pop culture icon. I went there, and it blew my mind. Funny that I say that, because it's funny that my two best movies of the year all have to do with nuclear warfare. We got Oppenheimer, which is about the guy behind the atomic bomb, and now we have Godzilla, who is technically a symbol of nuclear experimentations. And it's not just a monster movie. It's a movie about humans, humanitarianism, human collaboration. I mean, how can I explain it? Normally Godzilla movies have the human aspect, that sometimes they go so over the top that it's kind of like cheesy. Although it's acceptable, I even accept that cheesy Godzilla movies. Some they take it more seriously than others, but mostly in a kind of like in an action movie style. But this one, they decided to turn it into a drama about a man during post-World War II Japan, who he feels disgrace after running away from the battle and from trying to stop Godzilla when he had a chance, and from a country that had to go through extreme poverty during that time period, then to Godzilla come and bring chaos into a country that it was already suffering from all these ruins. You see, technically normal people, civilians, or ex-soldiers from the war, trying to come together as humans to stop this menace with the little things that they got. They don't have support from the government or the United States because of their own reasons. So they are left with the trinkets that they got, and Godzilla is something that you just shouldn't underestimate. It's a giant lizard that when it roams free, it destroys everything it can, because there's not exactly technically a big reason. It's his nature. It's a force of nature that you can't stop. And with a story that about a giant monster, that it also combines this drama of some guy looking for some piece of his mind, some redemption for his war regret, his PTSD for what people called it. It's a tearjerker that it's not something that. It's not an easy thing to do in movies. It doesn't matter if it came from Japan or Finland or United States. But in the end of the day, it also doesn't feel preachy, which is something that Hollywood is trying a little bit too hard when it's trying to convey messages. And look where it got into it. And now we got this one, Godzilla -1. A movie that really touched my heart, something that I was missing from the movies that I love, and it has the recognition that it deserves. So much that This is why. This is why Godzilla Minus One became my favorite movie of the year. And let's hope that we find more movies like that. Oh, and disclaimer. I did saw the trailer of Godzilla and King Kong that is coming up last year. I don't mind the cheesing, or you want to make it kind of like an action movie, but here's my complaint. Why there is a favoritism on King Kong? Okay, that's all I have to say. But anyway, these are my best movie of the year, with Godzilla Minus One being the biggest winner of this year. Ah man, when you see all these movies that you saw this year and the ones that you like, either for critical or personal reasons, it makes you feel good. Let's finish it out in the next video. But either way, if you don't want to see the worst, it doesn't matter. Happy New Year if you don't see the other video. Let's keep it on.